on a day that I think, or it was clear we didn't have our best stuff, it was the hope that we get out of there with a point, and disappointed to give up a goal the way we did, and lose the game. It's a typical CONCACAF game, very physical, very aggressive, and I think we came up short in a number of areas. So it's about rebounding, focusing on the game on Wednesday in Columbus, and having a positive game there and getting 3 points.
We'll start with questions and begin with Stephen Goff from the Washington Post.
Hi, Greg. Thanks for your time.
Yep.
Talk through the decision in this congested window to go with a mostly new lineup, and some of the decisions you made specifically with this new lineup.
Yeah. So, Stephen, looking at the game on Thursday in Austin, and then the travel, and then what we were going to be dealing with here, the conditions, we wanted to get fresh guys on the field. You saw some of the guys that played in the game in Austin, had a difficult time bringing the intensity that we needed. So we're hoping with this lineup that we're going to get mobility, and we didn't play our best. We didn't. We had a number of guys that performed below the expectations, and that's part of it. It's a young group. It's about learning, regrouping, and going from here.
We'll go to Ron Blum from the Associated Press.
Both Tyler and Matt said just the intensity of the team wasn't there, especially in the first half. Given you started talking about the need for intensity from the post-game address to the players the other night, and pretty much every day you mentioned it, how does something like that happen?
It's sports. It's humans. There's no, I think, one explanation for it, but our distances were too far. We didn't have that pop. We didn't have the legs that we needed, and we suffered for it. We weren't great in duels. Panama, we talked about being a very physical team, very difficult team to break down, and that's exactly what they were. And you need quick ball movement. We need guys getting on the ball, moving them around. We just didn't do that enough. So to me, there's that intensity side of it, and it wasn't through a lack of trying. I think it was a lack of, I don't know, but it wasn't a lack of trying. It was just we didn't have that 100% today. And then the playing side of it needs to be better. We were poor. We were really poor with our passing and some of our movement.
We'll go to Brian Strauss from Sports Illustrated.
Thanks, Michael. Hey, Greg.
Hey, Brian.
Just curious if you could elaborate a little more on what sort of posture or approach you wanted to see from that starting 11. Obviously, I understand the decisions you make over the course of 3 games in 7 days, but from that specific group and those specific players, front foot, direct play, winning duel, whatever it was you wanted to see from them and maybe didn't get. And how much was just the humidity and the conditions a factor? I mean, it was brutal just sitting there watching. I'm just curious how the guys, whether they suffered through that or whether it wasn't that noticeable.
No, it was big. It's not something, you don't want to give them an out, and you don't want to, make an excuse. But I think that had a factor. That was a factor. You were there, what it was like. But again, the other team had to plan it also. So that can't be the starting point for why we didn't play well in this game. So fundamentally, we talked about using our 2 center backs plus our center mid to bypass their front strikers. We needed help from our attacking mids to get the ball to the other side of the field. We wanted to overlap with our fullbacks and arrive in the penalty box with our forward and weak side winger. Unfortunately, the quality wasn't high enough in the final ball when we did get in those positions. I think the ability for our players to turn and play forward was lacking today. And overall, again, we performed below the expectations that we have for ourselves. And, that's part of it. It's a game, and sometimes it doesn't go your way. And now, for us, it's about, again, regrouping and focusing on Wednesday and having a good performance and good end to this window.
Next will be Grant Wall.
Hey, Greg.
Hey, Greg.
I totally get the need to make changes in the starting lineup. There were 3 particular players I wanted to ask you about, though, because I thought it was interesting that they weren't in the lineup. A guy like Tyler Adams, who has a big engine, and then Aronson and Pepe came off early in the last game. What went to deciding not to start those three guys in particular?
So part of it was we can bring them on the field. And with 5 subs, you can have some planned substitutes, and basically we looked at Brendan and Paul as one player, and we said we're going to use 90 minutes with those 2 players. Something very similar with Tyler. We wanted him to play 45 minutes because of his load. And, the other thing to keep in mind, Grant, is prior to this camp, Tyler hasn't been playing regularly for his team. He had a little bit of injury. He was in and out of the lineup. So now to ask a player who hasn't had any load or much load in the last 3 weeks to go play 3 90s, I wasn't comfortable with it, and I'll take responsibility for that. But the good thing is, he'll be ready to go against Costa Rica, and he should have full power for that game.
Next will be Jeff Carlisle from ESPN.
Thanks, Michael. Hey, Greg. You mentioned in your earlier remarks that you were hoping to get out of there with a point. So were these lineup changes a bit of a calculated risk in terms of reaching that end? And as a follow-up, your press tonight seemed kind of out of sync. Why was that?
Yeah, it was. And that's why we switched the second half in a 4-4-2, and it was much better in the second half. It was the distances. Again, we didn't have the pop that we needed to press. We realized that, and we had to pull back. I think once we did that, we were much more compact, and it gave us better opportunities in the game. What I meant by getting out of there with a point is seeing how our performance was in the first half and seeing how the game was going. We made some adjustments, and we're hoping to get some momentum. But when the game keeps going longer, at a certain point, you're like, okay, if we get out of here with a point, we'll be doing okay based on everything. And unfortunately, we didn't do that. But to be clear, the mindset prior to the game was not, to play for a point. We wanted to win the game. We put a lineup on the field that we thought could win the game, and we just didn't do it.
We'll go to Paul Tenorio from The Athletic.
Thanks, Michael. Greg, I know you've talked about kind of this team being a young team and giving them these experiences. They can only learn how to deal with it when you throw them out there. But how do you talk to that group about what was lacking tonight, some of the guys who you gave that chance to step up? And do you think it kind of even makes you rethink about how much you can rotate without losing some of the guys that you can count on for a certain level of performance every game?
No, listen, I don't think, we shouldn't harp on age. I think the starting lineup of last game was probably younger than this one. So and there we played great and everyone was happy and it's the best we play. It's all about what narrative you want to spin and what you're comfortable with. We know we're playing in extreme heat, extreme humidity. We know we travel 4.5 hours, and we know that we have another game on Wednesday, and we wanted to rotate players. And if it didn't work, then it's on me and it's my responsibility, or our responsibility as a staff. But the guys tried; they tried their best, and we'll, when you talk about evaluating the game, and it's a good question. For us, we look at our game model, we look at how we perform based on that, and we give instruction based on that. It's really clear, and that's what we'll do in this game.
Next will be Daniel Nora from Univision.
Hi, Greg. I want to ask you about the lack of control in the midfield, because we talked before the game about the role that need the midfielder to take in the 4-3-3 playing an away game. And I wonder if you get the chance to see the goal, the Panama goal, and if you have some remark about that set piece.
No, I mean, I watched it during the game again, and it's a ball that I think we can defend. I think we can do better on, and unfortunately we didn't. You don't normally expect to give up a goal on a ball like that, but give them credit. They were whipping balls into the penalty box on their corners. They did a good job in that. But what you said, I think, is Daniel, was important. We didn't have control of midfield, and that really hurt us in that game. I'm going to look at the touches that our midfielders had individually, but it was nowhere near what we expect. Distances were too big, the connections were too spread out, and it was it wasn't great in that regard. So we got to look at it and improve.
Next will be Sam Stejskal.
Thank you, Michael. Greg.
Hey, Sam.
you talked a lot about rotation. I don't want to harp on it any further. On the goal specifically, do you guys have? It looked like you were zoned up on the corner kick. Is there any thought to? I guess what is your thought process behind that system? And is there any thought to kind of changing it, given the corners that they were serving in the first half? The problems that those were causing.
You know, Sam, that's a really difficult question, man. You know, I think if you want to ask a question like that, we need to dig into how we've been defending corners, you know, for the last 2 years, the chances we gave up, based on the balls. You know, like, we're doing a good job defending set pieces. You know, so, you know, if you come with I think a question with more substance behind it and more data behind it, I'll happily answer that.
We'll take 2 more questions. We'll go to Ryan Talmadge from Goal.com.
Hey, Greg. Obviously, in the first half, Matt Turner was a guy who kind of kept you in the game at certain points with some of those saves. And obviously, look, Zach wasn't here, and you knew Matt was going to be in here. But what did you think about his performance in heading into this next game against Costa Rica? How do you kind of balance how he's been playing versus potentially throwing Zach back in there?
I think he played well. I think he's played well, all qualifiers. You know, and you know, he's been big all summer in the Gold Cup as well. You know, Matt's a guy that has established himself and made a lot of progress in the national team program. So, you know, we'll evaluate it as it comes, and you know, get someone on the field that can do the job.
Last question goes to Jonathan Tannenwald from the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Thank you, Michael, and thanks as always, Greg, for the time.
You bet, Jonathan.
On the subject of the lineup rotation
Yeah.
tonight, there was a lot of changes, not even just individually who they were. It was a large number of changes.
Yep.
And understanding the depth that's required to go through a 3-game window in a week and all that,
Yep.
was it maybe just too much change?
I think the way to look at it, and this is how I looked at it, and you know, now it obviously doesn't look like the best choice, but I think we have to wait till Thursday, because if we would have played the same players from the last game, first of all, 2 of them weren't even here, so that was going to be impossible. But if we would have played the same players in the same game, in this game, I'm not sure we would position ourselves in the best way to win again on Wednesday. It's a, you know, again, the conditions that we're dealing with here, with the travel, with the weather, made it complicated. And we had to make, you know, I guess, a somewhat risky decision. And the good thing is, we're still in second place, right? That's the good thing. We have the most goals scored, and one of the least amount of goals allowed. So our goal is to go into Wednesday's game and get 3 points. You know, we take every game as it comes, and Wednesday's another opportunity to get 3 points and further establish our position in the group.